Welcome to the channel, and this is another part of my decade build series, which is centered around the decade challenge. So if you are doing that, then maybe some of these builds will be helpful to you. I mostly wanted to do it because I love building and I also love history. So it's a win-win for me, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So if you haven't seen the other two parts, those are available. They're in a special playlist, which I'll put a link to in the corner as well as in the description below. So if you haven't seen those, make sure you have, because I'm going to be going in chronological order. This is 1900s, well, the beginning of it, and we're going to be doing kind of a very Americana style. It's super popular in the US. And the style itself is uniquely American. It's the Colonial Revival style. So Colonial Revival homes, they were professionally designed, and they were popular between 1880 and 1945. So they've had a very long leg of being popular with people. But the neo-colonials, which was from 1945 on to present day, they pretty much dominate most of our suburbs, at least like the more wealthier suburbs in the country. And this was to reflect building a more subtle, a building that wasn't as decorative and as fancy as from 1880 to 1945. Most Colonial Revival houses have clapboard and shingle, but usually brick is preferred, and in a lot of the reference pictures I saw, they used brick mostly, so that's why I chose some brick. And I was trying to make some columns here that spanned 2 floors, so I just used the Move Objects cheat, and I ended up changing the columns probably like 4 or 5 times because it wasn't looking how I wanted it to look, so I had some difficulty there. The windows on a Colonial Revival home are pretty simple. They're usually white with regular window panes. They weren't reproduced using the original colonial style though, because glass manufacturers had learned how to produce larger window panes that were basically a convenience for them as far as functionality goes. So most windows in the neo-colonial are rectangular with double hung sashes. They just kind of became more simple as the years went on, as things do. The entrances of a Colonial Revival home frequently have a very decorative entrance, so I tried to use one of the more fancier doors, and yeah, so that's pretty much a Colonial Revival home. This is more of an estate that I'm building. Another thing that I saw in my research is they usually have a side entrance where their guests would come on horseback, and they would go on the side, park their carriage, and the servants would then greet the guests and whatever. There's also sitting rooms. It's still very much Victorian at this point. It's a little more modern now, but just like in the 1890s, there was a sitting room for the men and for the women, and they would often entertain separate genders in that way. So here is some pictures that I used for reference, and this is a picture of a woman in a bathroom as well as a sitting room, which I'm assuming is a parlor of some kind, but I really enjoyed these pictures. This is a kitchen in 1900s, early 1900s. As you can see, there is running water, and there's some cookbooks and a butcher's block maybe, where they would cut the meat and all of that. And to the left is an example of a Colonial Revival home that is still around today, I think. And on the right is popular fashion for men in the 1900s. So the bowl hats and the wide collars. And yeah, so going back to the builds, right here I'm doing the front entrance or the foyer. It does have a grand staircase that goes up to the top, and that was pretty prevalent in a lot of foyers in this type of home or estate. I also noticed that a lot of the Colonial Revival homes of this time period had a sunroom. So if you lived in colder climates, but you still wanted to get some sun, you could sit in there. I ended up extending the back side of the house because I felt like it wasn't grand enough, and I really wanted to include some type of some type of ballroom so they could entertain guests and have parties and socialize and things like that. That was super popular in this time period, and because they couldn't really do much else, and socializing and gossiping and trying to find a potential suitor was basically the pastime of people during this time period. It was very, very important for women to find a good husband who was of means that would be able to take care of their family. A lot of times marriages were arranged too. That was still a thing then as well. So, yeah. As far as dances go, since I'm making the ballroom, pretty much by like 1870, social dances were considered like, oh, that's my parents' thing, or even their grandparents. So people were starting to get bored with social dances and, the old style of music that kind of dominated the Victorian era. So by like the 1890s to the early 1900s, African American music was being developed into what we know now as ragtime. So ragtime was kind of like the parent of jazz or African American influenced music. And as far as the dancing goes, people were like, oh, the old dances that we used to do, they're so boring and we want something new. So a lot of the younger generation during this time fully embraced ragtime music and started doing like almost like spontaneous dances instead of ones that were more choreographed in a way. As far as having fun goes, most people during this time actually felt really anxious because there was a lot of urban development going on. So a lot of the old was kind of becoming new, and a lot of Americans were stressed out, and they were like, how do we cope with this changing environment? So a lot of people during this time were encouraged to spend time outside. And like I said before, that's why they had sunrooms, so they would get sun to relieve stress. And also during this time, spectator sports became popular, and during this time, the first motion picture happened, which was in 1903. It was a silent film. And during this time, the Orville brothers were the first to fly the airplane. Henry Ford started production of the Model T. So a lot of people were like, what is going on? What is happening? And a lot of people's ways of life were kind of shaken. So that's kind of what was going on at the time. I'm not sure who the president was at the time. I think it might have been Teddy Roosevelt, or at least he was just a prominent figure during this time. Oh, and Kodak introduced the Brownie camera. So cameras and photography were becoming more readily available. So that's why I was able to find more pictures to reference. So that's cool because, yeah, that photography was becoming more popular. What else would they do? They were also encouraged to go to like the beach and go to seaside resorts. And actually here in Nashville, there's a place called the Parthenon, and it's a replica of the one in Greece. And what they would do there at the Parthenon Park is they would have different, almost like exhibits, but they would show off things that are popular or famous in other countries. So that way, people during this time could go to, it was like a world fair, kind of. And world fairs were popular attractions to go to from the 1900s to probably late 20s. But yeah, so right now I'm doing the sitting room in the sunroom area, so there's a lot of windows. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the curtains. I love these curtains that came with the vintage glamour stuff pack. And yeah, I found some like paintings that I really liked because there's not really a whole lot of old-fashioned paintings. And I like the idea of using red because I actually went to the Tennessee State Museum and they have exhibits that span from like Native Americans all the way till present day. And during the Victorian era, they have some exhibits that actually show what a sitting area looked like. And let me tell you, they were not shy about using bright colors and clashing patterns. Like, I don't know if that was just fashionable or if it was just like what they liked, but yeah, so I opted to use really bold colors and rugs and artwork and things like that, just to kind of show off the time period and what they liked. Of course, I had to put in a globe bar because why not? But yeah, I really like this. And if you want to download this house, it is available on the gallery. There is a few pieces like that painting right there of custom content. But if you look on my Tumblr, I have everything in the Victorian and Edwardian sections if you look on the CC navigation tab. So that should be pretty easy for you guys to find if you so wish. So now we're going upstairs, and upstairs is just basically the bedrooms and the bathrooms. I think I put a study up here too, but it's a really simple layout, really, because the houses, the Colonial Revival homes, they were very boxy and very like cookie cutter type of layout that would usually happen. So this room is kind of like the pink room, I guess. So this room would be considered more of a feminine room. So maybe if they had a woman guest, they would have her stay in this room. The room across from it is exactly the same, except it's blue, so I would think that would be more of a masculine room in a way. And not that I really believe in those things now, but they did then, so I was just trying to be historically accurate in that, because that's really how they thought back then, and they were very modest, and they were very concerned with the appearance of being modest as well. So even if they weren't inwardly, they had to be outwardly, so that way people would believe that, they were more modest than they actually were. So this is the study area, and it's a lot smaller than the one that I made in my 1890s Queen Anne, because I figured, well, what I was imagining, the owners of this estate, maybe, they work outside of the home, and he doesn't really use his office all that often, so he doesn't really need a lot of space, but they do like to entertain. So I wanted to have a lot of extra bedrooms for guests, and not worry too much about the study. But I did want to have one in there because that was a very prominent thing in older homes. So this room is the white room, and I thought maybe this would be a room that they would entertain, well, not entertain, but if they would have a more high society type of guest, then maybe they would put them here in the white room. And the room across from it is also exactly the same, but it's darker, so maybe they have a more traditional guest, or maybe that's the master bedroom. So yeah, either one of those could really be the master bedroom. They're both the same size. So moving on to the room across from it, as you can see, I took advantage of this beautiful paneling because, I don't know, I thought it just suited the room really well since I used the paneling on the other side. So this is just a darker room, maybe for a male guest of high society, or maybe this is the master bedroom. I personally like the white room better, so I'm going to say that's the master bedroom and this is the suite. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say. I don't think that this couple that owns this estate has children, so that's why I didn't include a child's room. So yeah, that would have been kind of scandalous, I think, if, you weren't able to have kids. So maybe they just throw money at people and hope for the best. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this part of the Decade Build series. I can't wait to start on more. Next time will be, I believe it's a craftsman style home, still in the 1900s. So yeah. And we're going to go into the little machinima that I usually put at the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!